For about 30 years, the backyard swimming pool was the ultimate symbol of having made it. A springboard, a deep end, a slide curling down into glittering blue water, the whole neighborhood quietly wanting one of their own. At least, that's what everyone believed back then, because hidden inside those same pools were features so dangerous that, one by one, they were pulled off the market, outlawed, demolished, and in a few cases erased so completely that most people under 40 have never even seen them. 25 pool features that used to be perfectly normal, 25 that are gone for good. Some were demolished overnight after a single death, some were strangled slowly by insurance companies and quiet lines added to a code book. And a few were so insane that the only real surprise is that anyone ever signed off on building them in the first place. The reason they all vanished is stranger and a great deal darker than the features themselves. This story doesn't start with safety inspectors or lawsuits. It starts with a feeling, the feeling that a pool was supposed to be thrilling, a little dangerous, a place where the rules of the regular world bent just slightly. That single idea built an entire era of backyard and water park design from the suburbs to the strangest amusement parks ever opened. And it's the exact same idea that decades later got nearly every feature on this list wiped out. So the countdown starts at the bottom and climbs all the way up to the most insane of them all. Number 25. The bottomless drain. Every pool has to pull water through a drain at its lowest point, and for decades that drain was a single flat grate sitting at the bottom of the deep end. The suction behind it was strong enough to hold a grown adult flat against the floor. Children were pulled down and trapped underwater by their hair, by an arm, sometimes by the raw force of the water alone, with no way to break free. The danger even had a clinical name: suction entrapment. And it went mostly ignored for years, treated as a freak accident rather than a design flaw, until the granddaughter of a former United States Secretary of State died this exact way. That single death led to the Virginia Grain-Baker Pool and Spa Safety Act, and after it passed, the lone flat drain was finished. New pools now require anti-entrapment covers and split drains so the suction can never lock onto a body. The most unsettling part of the whole thing is how ordinary it was. The deadliest object in the entire pool was the one part nobody ever thought about, hiding in plain sight at the bottom. Number 24. The towering home springboard. There was a long stretch of years when a serious backyard pool came with a real diving board, sometimes a tall one, bolted over a deep well. The physics of it were brutal. A diver leaves the board, climbs through the air, and comes down headfirst toward water that was very often far too shallow for the height involved, with hard concrete waiting on every side. Spinal injuries piled up across the country. And here, human behavior quietly made everything worse, through something psychologists call risk compensation. The fancier and higher the board looked, the more confident the divers felt, and the bigger the chances they took, canceling out the very safety they thought they had. Eventually, the insurance companies ran the cold numbers and simply refused to cover homes that had a diving board at all. Building codes raised the required water depth so far that most backyards physically could not fit a legal diving pool anymore. The board was never killed by one dramatic headline. It got quietly priced and regulated into extinction instead, which turned out to be a far more permanent kind of death. Number 23. The shallow end slide. The classic backyard pool slide was a tall, curving tongue of slick fiberglass that launched riders out over the surface. The problem was never the slide. It was where people landed. Many of these slides emptied riders out headfirst into water barely waist deep, and the combination of speed, downward angle, and a hard pool bottom produced exactly the kind of neck injuries that end a life or change it forever in a single second. Federal safety regulators eventually set strict rules for slide angle, minimum water depth, and the warnings that had to be printed on every unit, and almost every old slide on the market met none of them. Manufacturers stopped building them. Retailers stopped stocking them. The towering home pool slide became a relic, surviving now mostly in faded summer photographs, and in the memory of anyone who grew up cannonballing off the end of one. Number 22. The electric deep end underwater lighting turned an ordinary pool into something close to magic after dark, a glowing blue room a person could float around inside. But the earliest underwater lights ran on full household voltage. sitting inside a giant tank of water that conducts electricity beautifully with swimmers in it. When the wiring aged or a single seal failed, the entire pool could go live, and a swimmer caught in that field couldn't even command their own muscles to reach the ladder. There's a name for it now: electric shock drowning, and it killed quietly, often written off as an ordinary drowning because nothing on the surface looked wrong. Modern codes forced every pool onto low-voltage lighting and ground fault protection that cuts the power in a fraction of a second the instant anything leaks. The beautiful glowing pool stayed exactly where it was. The lethal wiring hidden behind it was outlawed. Number 21. The gas chlorinator, long before the tidy buckets and tablets of pool chemicals sold today. Some pools were sanitized using pressurized tanks of pure chlorine gas. The same chlorine gas, chemically speaking, that was used as a weapon in the trenches of the First World War. A leak in a backyard pump shed or a hotel mechanical room could send an invisible cloud of it drifting straight toward swimmers and chlorine gas tears into human lungs fast. After enough poisonings, evacuations, and panicked hospital trips, gas chlorination was pushed almost entirely out of residential and small commercial pools, replaced by far safer liquids and tablets. A feature once sold as the most advanced sanitation money could buy turned out to be one of the most dangerous things sitting anywhere on the property. Number 20. The open, unfenced pool. This one sounds far too simple to belong on a list of insane features, and that is precisely why it was so deadly. For a very long time, a backyard pool was just a hole full of water sitting open in the yard, no fence, no gate, no barrier of any kind between it and the back door. To a wandering toddler, that is a silent, irresistible, and absolutely lethal invitation. Drowning climbed into the leading causes of death for young children, and almost all of it happened in home pools with no barrier at all, usually in the few quiet minutes when everyone assumed someone else was watching. Region after region passed pool fencing and self-latching gate laws until the unfenced residential pool became flatly illegal almost everywhere. The thing that got banned here wasn't exotic at all. It was the absence of a feature and the comfortable false belief that an adult would always be looking. Number 19. The walk-on pool cover. Automatic and solar covers were sold as the absolute height of convenience, a solid surface that rolled across the water at the push of a button, looking sturdy enough to stand on. Children believed exactly that. They climbed aboard, the cover sagged under the weight rainwater pooled on top, or the child slipped down beneath it, and they ended up trapped in the dark, sealed gap between the cover and the surface where no one above could see them and no one could hear them. Safety agencies issued warning after warning about children drowning underneath pool covers, often within feet of adults who had no idea. The dangerous designs, the ones that pooled water on top or could seal a child underneath, were redesigned or pulled off the market entirely. The convenience survived just fine. The version that doubled as a hidden trap did not. Number 18. The 12-foot deep end. There was a stretch of decades when a genuinely deep pool signaled money and seriousness, with deep ends plunging 10, 11, even 12 feet straight down to make room for diving. Then reality caught up. Almost nobody actually dove. The deep water mostly just sat there as a place for weak swimmers to drift out of their depth and quietly panic, while doubling the cost to heat, fill, and maintain the whole pool for the rest of its life. Newer safety guidance and codes nudged residential pools toward shallower, more uniform depths, and today a booming renovation trend has homeowners deliberately filling those cavernous deep ends back in with concrete to make their pools safer and cheaper to run. The deep diving well was never struck down by one statute. Between changing codes and the shovel, it is steadily being erased from the literal ground it was dug into. Number 17. The electrified swim-up bar. Resort and hotel pools fell in love with the swim-up bar, a counter a guest could reach without ever leaving the water, frequently wired with blenders, neon lights, sound systems, and refrigeration humming just inches above the swimmers' heads. Mixing live electrical equipment, metal fittings, and a pool packed with people is a nightmare for the same electric shock drowning reason that doomed the old underwater lights. Several jurisdictions cracked down hard on running powered equipment that close to the waterline, and the freewheeling, fully wired swim-up bar of the 70s and 80s was either reined in or banned outright. The polished version that exists at resorts today is a heavily regulated, heavily grounded descendant of a feature that used to be quietly, genuinely lethal. Number 16. The black bottom pool. Dark bottom pools looked absolutely stunning, like a flawless sheet of polished black glass dropped into the yard, and for a while they were the must-have luxury finish. But that gorgeous mirror surface hid a serious problem. A black bottom makes it nearly impossible to spot a swimmer in trouble down below, and it perfectly camouflages a small child who has already slipped under and gone still. Lifeguards and safety experts pushed back hard, and many public and commercial pools were prohibited from using a bottom so dark that a body on the floor would be invisible from the deck. The exact look that sold the pool was the thing that made it dangerous, a clean and almost poetic example of style and safety sitting on opposite ends of the same design. Number 15. The rock jump and the rope swing. Backyard pools built during the boom years were often styled like a private tropical resort, complete with stacked rock waterfalls built for climbing and rope swings strung out over the deep end. The fantasy on sale was a cliff jump in your own yard. The reality was children launching off slick, wet rock into water of unknown depth, in a backyard with no lifeguard and absolutely nothing soft to land on anywhere. Head injuries, broken backs, and drownings followed in a grim, predictable rhythm. Liability rules and pool codes came down hard on climbable features, and swings hung over residential water, and the rock jump resort fantasy quietly faded out of new builds. The feeling it was selling, a little danger, a little daring, is the exact feeling running underneath this entire era of design. And it is the reason so many of these features existed in the first place. Number 14. The wave pool that earned a nickname. Out in northern New Jersey, there was a water park so gloriously, recklessly dangerous that it became an American legend, and its beating heart was an enormous wave pool that generated swells big enough to knock grown adults clean off their feet. So many swimmers got into trouble in it that staff reportedly hauled struggling people out by the dozen on the busiest days, and the pool earned a grim nickname among employees referencing the bodies it kept producing. Multiple people died there over the years. Behavioral psychologists have a precise term for how a place like that keeps operating. Normalization of deviance. Every reckless day that somehow ended without a fatality made the next reckless day feel a little more normal. And the next, until one day it wasn't normal at all. The park eventually closed for good. The wave pool was drained, and that entire style of oversized, barely supervised wave machine became something the industry flatly refused to ever build again. If a pool with a body count nickname is exactly the kind of buried history you came here for, the subscribe button keeps stories like this one coming every single week. Now, back to the countdown, because the next handful are the ones that genuinely sound made up. Number 13. The concrete slide with no brakes. That same legendary New Jersey park also ran an alpine slide. A long track running straight down the side of a mountain where riders sat on a tiny sled with one flimsy handbrake and rocketed down a hard chute of concrete and fiberglass. Riders regularly flew off the track entirely, slammed into the bottom of the trough at full speed, and walked away when they could walk with savage road rash burns, broken bones, and worse. At least one person died on it. The ride blurred the line between a pool slide and a full amusement attraction, and it represented everything. Safety regulators eventually moved to stamp out high speed, plus hard surfaces, plus almost no rider control. Slides built on that recipe were either rebuilt with water, walls, and real braking, or they disappeared from the earth completely. Number 12. The trapdoor drop slide. Some water parks chase the ultimate adrenaline rush with a near-vertical speed slide where the rider stood inside a sealed glass capsule. The floor silently dropped out from under their feet without warning, and they plummeted into a steep chute below. The free-fall start was the entire selling point, and it was also the entire problem. Riders lost all sense of orientation, hit the slide surface at painful speed, and in some designs the rushing water surged up to meet them in ways that knocked the air clean out of their lungs. The most extreme versions were quietly pulled or rebuilt after the injury reports stacked up. Because a slide engineered to genuinely scare the body into a full panic response is a slide that ends up hurting the people on it. The fear was the feature, and that is the precise reason it had to go. Number 11. The launch into the open air. A handful of parks and lakefront resorts once offered ways to fling an actual human being skyward over the water, from giant inflatable airbags that catapulted one person whenever a heavier person leapt onto the far end, to literal water-powered launchers built to shoot someone into the sky. The appeal was obvious: flight, weightlessness, a story to tell at work on Monday. The danger was just as obvious in hindsight. Because a body thrown 10 or 20 feet into the air comes down however gravity decides, sometimes flat on the back, sometimes onto another person, sometimes well short of deep water. Concussions and spinal injuries stacked up, and insurers and regulators came down on human-launched devices until the over-the-top commercial versions were effectively banned from operation. It is a perfect snapshot of an era that treated the human body like a toy and treated the water like an unbreakable promise of safety. Number 10. The pool stocked with live animals. Certain luxury resorts once leaned hard into spectacle by putting living creatures into and around their pools, from sharks and rays gliding behind glass beneath the swimmers to dolphins in adjoining tanks that guests could reach out and touch. It was marketed as paradise on earth. For the animals, it was a cramped, chlorinated, high-stress existence, and for the guests, it carried a very real risk of bites and injury that the brochures never mentioned. Growing animal welfare law and a sharp shift in public opinion turned the live animal pool from a glamorous status symbol into a liability nobody wanted their resort's name attached to anymore. New ones largely stopped being built, and many of the existing attractions were quietly shut down and emptied out. A feature designed to scream wealth and wonder slowly became something far closer to an embarrassment. Number 9. The glass pool hanging in the sky. Modern luxury towers reintroduced real danger, wearing a sleek new costume, with transparent swimming pools cantilevered right off the side of high-rise buildings. In a few cases, a fully clear-bottomed bridge of water suspended dozens of stories above the street. The engineering behind it is genuinely impressive. It is also a structure where the only thing standing between a relaxed swimmer and a very long, very fatal fall is a panel of acrylic under enormous and constant stress. Regulators and structural engineers have circled these designs warily, tightening exactly where and how they can be built. And several proposed sky pools have been blocked or heavily restricted before a single person ever climbed in. The thrill of doing laps out over the open void turned out to be a thrill that most building codes on Earth were never written to permit. Number 8. The Motel Diving Tower. In the golden age of the roadside motor lodge, a tall multi-level diving tower standing over the pool was a genuine attraction that pulled tired families straight off the highway. Stacked platforms, a high board crowning the top, a crowd of kids waiting below. The trouble was that these towers invited completely untrained guests, very often children, very often at the end of a long travel day, while the adults relaxed with a few drinks, to throw themselves from real height into a pool that was rarely deep enough and never supervised the way a true competition venue would be. The injuries were grimly predictable. As liability law matured, the motel diving tower quietly became uninsurable, and one by one across the country they were dismantled and carted off. The empty bolt footings left behind in old motel pool decks are sometimes the only proof those towers ever stood there at all. Number 7. The hidden drop-off. Beach entry pools, the kind that slope in gently like a real shoreline, became hugely popular because they felt natural, gentle, and welcoming to nervous swimmers. But a badly designed beach entry hides a brutal little trick. A toddler or weak swimmer wading along happily in ankle-deep water can take one more ordinary step forward and suddenly drop into water well over their head with no curb, no step, and no warning at all underfoot to mark the edge. The gentle slope that made the whole pool feel so safe was the exact thing that drowned people, because the danger stayed completely invisible right up until the instant it was too late. Codes now demand clearer depth markings, strict slope limits, and barriers on these designs, and the old unmarked drop-off entry was steadily regulated into the past. Number 6. The Backyard Infinity Edge. The vanishing edge pool, where the water spills over a lip and seems to merge seamlessly with the horizon, is one of the most photographed luxury features ever designed. In a controlled resort setting with a proper catch basin below and real barriers in place, it works beautifully. Copied cheaply into a backyard perched on a slope, it becomes a polished overflow ramp aiming swimmers toward a literal edge, sometimes with a serious drop waiting on the far side, a slick spillover lip, and no railing anywhere because a railing would ruin the whole illusion. Enough incidents and code challenges follow that many regions now sharply restrict residential vanishing edges, demanding basins, barriers, and structural engineering that most homeowners simply can't justify paying for. The single most beautiful pool feature of the modern era is also, quietly, one of the most heavily restricted. Number 5. The pool with a moving floor. This one sounds like pure science fiction. A hydraulic floor that rises and falls on command, so the very same pool could be 10 feet deep for diving in the morning. A shallow wading pool for the children by afternoon, and a flat, dry dance floor by night. As an engineering marvel, it is incredible. As a safety proposition, it is a nightmare. A floor that moves is a floor that can pin a swimmer, trap a limb, or change the water depth while someone is still down there, and the dark mechanical spaces underneath it create entrapment points that a normal pool simply does not have anywhere. Once the risks became undeniable, movable floor pools were buried under so much regulation, mandatory inspection, and crushing liability that they essentially vanished from everything except a few highly specialized commercial installations. The pool that could transform into anything turned out to be the pool that could trap you in ways nothing else ever could, and there's a quiet psychological reason these kept getting approved at all. A feature that impressive overwhelms the part of the brain that's supposed to ask whether it's safe, because awe and caution fire from very different places, and awe almost always wins the room first. Number 4. The scorching steel slide. Before fiberglass took over the market, public and backyard pools featured tall slides made of bare, polished steel mounted on tall steel ladders. Two completely separate dangers lived inside that one cheerful-looking object. On a hot summer afternoon, the metal heated up enough to give a child a real burn the instant their skin touched it, and the tall, narrow, wobbling steel ladders sent kids tumbling from height onto hard concrete decks with grim regularity. As burn complaints and fall injuries mounted year after year, bare metal slides were phased out and effectively banned from new installations in favor of cooler, enclosed, far safer designs. It is one of those features that everyone over a certain age remembers vividly, usually with a small wince and a phantom memory of hot metal, and that almost no child alive today has ever once touched. Number 3. The diving board on an above-ground pool. The math here is almost too grim to believe people actually attempted it. A round 4-foot deep above-ground pool, the exact kind sold flat-packed in a box at the department store, fitted with an aftermarket deck and a genuine springboard bolted to the side. People really did this. They mounted real diving boards over water barely deep enough to sit down in, and the result was a steady, horrifying stream of catastrophic head and neck injuries from divers striking the bottom almost the instant they entered. The danger was so severe and so blindingly obvious that selling or installing diving boards over shallow above-ground pools was shut down hard, and manufacturers began plastering urgent warnings across every box and liner. The feature didn't just get banned, it became the textbook example used to scare people away from the entire idea. Number 2. The tallest water slide ever built. In Kansas City, a water park constructed a slide so enormous it shattered the world record. A near-vertical plunge down a tower standing taller than a 17-story building, with riders sent over the top on a multi-person raft. It was a true spectacle, the kind of ride people drove across multiple states just to experience once. In 2016, a 10-year-old boy was killed on it, and the investigation that followed revealed the ride had been rushed into existence, dangerously under-engineered, and pushed past the basic limits of physics in a desperate chase for the world record. The slide was closed immediately, then demolished entirely down to the foundation, and the company behind it faced serious criminal and civil consequences. It stands as the hardest lesson on this whole list. When the thrill becomes the only goal that matters, and real safety becomes an afterthought bolted on later, the result isn't daring at all. It's a tragedy that ends with the entire structure torn down to the ground. Number 1. The water slide with a full loop in it. And so the countdown ends right back at that infamous New Jersey park with the single most insane pool feature ever opened to the paying public. A fully enclosed water slide with a complete vertical loop built into it, like a roller coaster, except powered by nothing but a human body sliding down on a thin film of water. The physics never actually worked.
Riders simply didn't carry enough speed to clear the top of the loop cleanly, so they got stuck inside it, slid back down onto the next person coming through, and emerged with bloody noses and persistent reports of teeth left behind on the slide. The legend goes that a removable hatch was eventually cut into the top of the loop for the sole purpose of letting staff climb in and drag trapped riders back out. It opened. It terrified nearly everyone who survived a trip through it, and it was shut down almost immediately, reportedly lasting only about a month before it was closed for good. No serious version of it has ever been allowed to operate anywhere since. It is the purest possible distillation of the single idea that defined this entire era.
If it sounds dangerous, build it bigger, and the water will sort the rest out. The water did not. Step all the way back from these 25 and a pattern snaps into focus that's far bigger than any single slide or drain. Not one of these features was dreamed up by a villain. Every one of them was built by ordinary people chasing a feeling, the thrill, the status, the deep human sense that a pool was supposed to be just a little bit wild. And almost every one of them was undone by the very same slow, grinding force. A death, then an investigation, then a lawsuit, then a fresh line added to a codebook somewhere, and finally quiet erasure. The pools of today are safer than they have ever been in human history, and they are also undeniably a little tamer than the ones that came before. That quiet trade is the entire story of how we live now. Written out in concrete and water, we decided, one band feature at a time, that we would rather be bored than buried. Whether that has made the modern pool genuinely better or simply safer is the real question worth sitting with for a moment. If this kind of buried history is exactly what you came here for, there's a whole channel of it waiting, and the next story is already being built.